Today's League Lowdown brings us to the Nordic nation of Finland. This nation of winter sports lovers also adore the beautiful game. And in this episode, we'll be trying to inspire your next FM22 Save Idea by examining the best clubs to manage in Football Manager in this great nation. So grab your passport and some warm clothes as we dive into the League Lowdown guide to Finland. Welcome to the League Lowdown Guide to Finland, where we'll be trying to inspire your next FM22 adventure by tempting you with stories of some of the clubs that you could manage in this nation. Let's jump in and have a look at how the league structure works. So Finland offers two playable divisions. There's 12 teams in the top flight. To begin with, the league structure is pretty simple. They play each other home and away over a 22-game regular season. Then things get interesting. The top six play off for the title. Then there are further playoffs to decide the European places that also include the team that comes top of the relegation group. Those bottom six teams play each other to see who's going to be automatically relegated out of the top flight and who's going to enter a playoff, play against the team that comes second in the second tier of Finnish football. In their relegation group at the end of the season, as many as 3 teams are relegated out of the second flight into the unplayable divisions in Football Manager. So that's how the league structure works. Let's have a look at the clubs you could manage, starting with Finland's most successful. The club with the most titles in Finland is HJK, who, when they were formed at the beginning of the previous century, were a club associated with Finnish nationalism and the promotion of the speaking of the Finnish language, whereas elsewhere in the capital of Helsinki, Swedish was still widely spoken. They're a club that have gone the furthest in the Champions League of any club in Finland, having reached the group stage in 1998. And in terms of their domestic trophy haul, well, last season was their 31st Finnish title, winning it back-to-back over the last 2 years. They've also won the Finnish Cup on 12 occasions as well. As you would expect for the most successful club in Finland, it's reflected in them having some of the best facilities as well, with great training facilities, good youth facilities, good academy coaching, and good youth recruitment. And many Finnish internationals down the years have come through at HJK. I guess the challenge if you take over this club is to try and win a European trophy for the first time for a club from Finland. But if you like the idea of trying to oust the favourites for the title, well, there's other clubs that you could take charge of that have been challenging over the last season or two. The runners-up in the Veikkausliiga last season were KUPS, the club that actually won the regular season after 22 games, but were pipped to the title eventually by HJK. They play at a 4,700 capacity stadium. They've won the Veikkausliiga 6 times themselves, most recently in 2019, the last team to win it before HJK's back-to-back title victories. They've also won the Finnish Cup on 3 occasions, and whilst they might not have facilities quite as good as HJK, they are still not too shabby, with good training facilities, adequate youth facilities, adequate academy coaching, and average youth facilities with some upgrades to the stadium taking place. They have been one of HJK's fiercest challengers over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Maybe you'd like to take charge of them and restore them to the top of the table. The club that placed 3rd in the Veikkausliiga last campaign are SJK, who play at a rather attractive 5,800 capacity stadium and are based in a town to the northwest of Helsinki, out towards the western coast of Finland. They are currently enjoying a pretty good spell during their history. They've won the Veikkausliiga once back in 2015. A year later, they also managed to win the Finnish Cup as well. Only 2 major honours in Finnish football for SJK. But maybe you're the coach to take over and guide this club to become the nation's most dominant side. The other team that might be able to challenge HJK for the title if you take charge of them are Inter Turku, who placed 4th place in real life last campaign. Like SJK, they've only won the Veikkausliiga once, but they were only formed in 1990, so they are a relatively young club. When they won the title, it was back in 2008, but they've won the Finnish Cup twice, one of those more recently, back in 2018, as well as winning it in 2009 as well. So Inter Turku are clearly a club that might be able to give you the resources that you need to be able to challenge HJK. Perhaps not in the first season, but certainly within the first few. And maybe you're looking for a club that's perhaps a little bit less fancied for the title, but has multiple league wins in its history. Due to the financial problems that have plagued many Finnish clubs over recent decades, lots of the teams that have won multiple league titles are now playing in the lower levels of Finnish football. But one of the clubs still playing in the top flight are FC Haka. They played a very compact 3,200 capacity stadium, and although they might not be one of the teams fancied for the title this campaign, throughout their history they've actually managed to win the top division on 9 different occasions, most recently in 2004. But Haka are also a team with a rich cup history as well, winning it 12 times. You're going all the way back to 2005 to find the most recent of them, but cup wins and league triumphs are not the only important part of Haka's history. In the 1983-84 season, they made it all the way to the quarter-finals of the European Cup Winners' Cup before eventually bowing out to Italian giants Juventus. It's going to be a tough challenge to take them back to that kind of competitive force again. Maybe that's the kind of challenge that you're looking for. Another club with multiple league titles are HJK's Helsinki rivals, Helsingfors, who have a long and successful history, but for the last couple of decades were bouncing around the lower divisions for much of that time. But since 2019, they've been back in the top flight, reigniting one of the Helsinki derbies with HJK. They've won the top flight on 7 occasions. They were big in the 1930s. The most recent title they've won was back in the early 60s, and they've never won the Finnish Cup either. They have a very healthy rivalry with HJK. Maybe you'd like to take over one of Helsinki's other clubs and guide them back to the top Finnish football. If you're looking for more of a rebuild for your Football Manager challenge, well, in the second tier of Finnish football, you'll find a couple of clubs that might fit the bill. One of them is KTP, who are recently relegated, but the media has them as the favourites to be promoted back to the top flight this campaign. They may not have won a trophy for a while, but back in the early 1950s, they were winning the top flight back-to-back in 1951 and 1952. They've also got 4 Finnish Cup victories as well, although the most recent of those was not since 1980, so they are on a long spell without a trophy. Turning them back into a force in Finnish football would be a challenge, but there is another club playing in the second tier who have even more titles. And the club in question are TP, another side from the city of Turku. In previous decades, this was one of the most successful clubs in Finnish football, particularly in the 1970s when they won 3 of their 8 league titles. They've won the Finnish Cup on 3 occasions as well, 2010 being their most recent trophy victory. But they're also a club with a bit of European pedigree as well. In the 1987-88 season, they went to Inter in Milan and beat them in the San Siro before bowing out on away goals. Their performances were enough to convince Inter to sign the player that scored the winning goal in that leg in the San Siro. But they're now down in the second tier. It would be a huge rebuild to turn them back into a force capable of competing for the top division title. That's the kind of challenge that many players of FM are looking for. So that completes the League Lowdown guide to Finland, a nation that is dominated by one incredibly successful club, and the challenge is to either guide them to European glory or take over one of their rivals and see if you can overthrow the nation's powerhouse. We'll see you very soon when we'll make another nation the focus of our next League Lowdown.